A young boy named Mowgli is raised in the jungle by a pack of wolves until he is forced to flee by Shere Khan, a human-hating tiger who wants him dead.
The good.
I think the biggest argument in favor of these live-action remakes of our childhood favorite movies is that by doing them in such a fashion, the medium of live action is so different from that of animation that you have the ability to put emphasis on different things in different retellings of the story. And I think this movie does exactly what it needs to do in that area, exactly where it needs to do that. Given that 99% of this movie's cast of characters are CGI talking animals, there's a necessity to make sure this element is working well in order for the movie as a whole to be strong. And for the most part, I think it is. I think the computer animation has been done in such a way that it feels like they're moving and behaving like animals. And simultaneously, as characters, the actors giving voice to them do a great job. The performances in this movie add more gravitas to the situation and the words being spoken than I think were present in the animated version. Thankfully, this was done without sacrificing most of the previously established light-hearted elements of each of these characters, with possibly the exception of the antagonistic characters. In addition, the recreation of the familiar imagery and situations shown in the original Jungle Book film mesh well with the performances to give the entire story greater weight and scale, upping the intensity of the story and raising the bar for its stakes. I feel like I'm saying it more and more these days, but thank you, PG rating. This movie's also really good at taking its established character moments, themes, and motifs, and also at calling back to these various elements throughout the movie in ways that effectively furthers the audience's understanding of the world, the characters, and the story. I was also a fan of the way they showcase Mowgli's character traits, abilities, and his emotional journey throughout this movie. He's less whiny than his animated counterpart, and whatever whining he does do is the whining of a frustrated kid who doesn't have all the answers that he needs. I like the movie's approach of telling Mowgli's story in a more linear, progressive, evolutionary fashion, as opposed to the animated version's more anthological approach. All in all, I think this movie just did a really good job of giving justice to the character of Mowgli in a more compelling and understandable way than the animated version did.
The iffy.
There were certain moments in this movie that I wanted to feel more emotional about than I actually did while watching it. Specifically, I think I would have liked to see more of Mowgli growing up with his surrogate wolf family before the plot really got kicked into motion fairly early on in the movie. More screen time spent with this surrogate family could have further solidified the relationship he had with them before he is forced to leave them. Enough people are probably familiar with the Jungle Book story, enough to the point that they don't want to spend too much time re-establishing it and they just want to get into the meat of the story.
The bad.
This movie uses two updated renditions of songs from the classic 1970s animated movie within the plot itself. Now, the inclusion of the songs themselves at all is not the problem, because Cinderella and Maleficent both did this. The difference is they played their renditions during the end credits, so it was a nice little bonus feature to the movie. In the case of the Jungle Book, these songs are used directly within the plot, and the way they're used is kind of distracting and feels a little more tacked on.
The verdict?
On its own merits, this movie is a pretty sweet, heartfelt story about a boy who's trying to find his identity in a world that, at first glance, it doesn't look like he belongs in. As a remake of the Disney animated classic, I think they did a good job. Call me blasphemous, but I think this version might actually be better than its animated counterpart. You know, if you couldn't already tell that I thought that based on my comments. This is Detective Steve, wondering what's next on the Disney live-action remake list. Oh. Would you guys kill me if I say that I haven't watched the original film?